So here we are in Varna, looking and listening to shows of all kinds. We are not aware, we are analyzing them, and besides we do not know if we should speak of spectacle, performance, représentation or mise en scène. Each of our languages uses different concepts and terms to refer to the objects of our perception and our desire. And yet, each of us knows intuitively that we are perceiving a set of visual and auditory objects, things which are real, but which are also real signs of something. But of what exactly? We then begin to ask ourselves a lot of questions, and the more imprudent and anxious among us begin to make up a list of questions and even propose our own little questionnaire. That's exactly what I tried to do in the past, as I would give my students a kind of checklist in order to write down the elements of the performance which make sense, or if you prefer, make sensation, and which lead us to an understanding of the show. I'd rather say in French, an understanding of the mise en scène, which organizes this flood of signs. So about mise en scène, I'm going to use the term mise en scène, the French term. I don't know how to use other terms really, because performance can be anything, cultural performance and performance. It can be a performative action, so it's not very precise for me. So when I talk about mise en scène, basically I talk about the production you're seeing, the Inszenierung, like German would say, the Inszenatie, or the представление in your language. Basically, I mean by mise en scène a system of meaning, of meanings, the process, also the process of staging, mettre en scène, put on stage, and the directing, and finally the result, la mise en scène is, like you would say, this is la représentation, what you're seeing. So I made a few copies of the documents I'm going to talk about, and I started with this questionnaire. I'm not going to comment on it because I think it's pretty obvious. Just for our purposes today, I would say that the important questions are at the beginning. What are the general features of the production? What holds the elements of the performance together? What relationships between stage and systems? Or another question, is it coherence or incoherence of the mise en scène? What is the coherence founded on? Or another question, where does the production stand within the cultural and aesthetic context? Then a question which is kind of provocative question, what bothers you about this production? What are its strong, weak or boring moments? How does it measure up with other current production? And so on. So there were questions about all elements of the production, like stage design, lighting system, props, costume, actors' performance, which would be very much more difficult to talk about actors' performance, obviously, because it's so close to the mise en scène, and so on. So maybe it's not necessary to go too far there to re-explain things. Another important item, though, was number 10, text in performance. What choices of stage version, what changes are made? What are the characteristics of translation, if there is a translation? What place does the staging, la mise en scène, give to the dramatic text? What is the relationship between text and image, between eye and ear? So these are very general questions, very difficult questions. Anyway, you can always go back to that if you have questions later. I worked with this a little between in the 70s and the end of the last century until from the late 70s to the end of the last century. But every questionnaire evolves with time because our understanding of theatre and its place in society changes before our eyes without us noticing immediately. In the same manner, the methodology for the analysis of society or of a work of art, which from the 60s down onwards was often based on structuralism and semiology, became more balanced, taking advantage of a less systematic and a broader approach, as in the case of performance studies. I make a very distinction between performance studies and theatre studies, as you know. While the theatre semiology of the 70s and 80s was eager to explain the system of mise en scène, a system based around the director, performance studies, conversely, sought to describe performative actions and cultural performances of all kinds, including action in daily life. This performance studies was not interested, as semiological analysis of mise en scène had been, in detailing the various components of a theatre performance. Performance studies was only interested in identifying the kinds of performative actions of which theatre or performance art, we say in French, la performance, that's performance art, were only particular cases among an infinite number of performative actions in social life. Under the influence of performance studies, the semiology of theatre somehow almost dissolved into a frantic discovering of all kinds of performative and social practices. A theatre production was no longer considered a surface or a space to be filled by means of the magic wand of an almighty director, then to be deciphered by a systematic spectator, but as a mechanism to be activated, a global action to be described, and a movement to be followed. Unfortunately, the semiological formal moment of performance analysis failed to connect in those years with research on the body. The 1980s, 90s, and 2000 saw a growing number of studies on the body and on corporal practices, particularly on the body in action, speech on stage, and what I call verbocorps in French. I don't know how to translate it. Maybe something like verbal body, a specific, unique connection of body, that is voice, and word, that is text. And even more unfortunately, during these years of the rediscovery of the body, theatre theory also failed to connect with gender studies. This crucial moment would have been of great help to the analysis and practice of mise en scène. As Juliette Rennes rightly remarks, quote, "In history, sociology and anthropology, research on gender shines a new light on the use of the body in sport, artistic, religious, professional, and language activities, or during interactions or journeys in urban space," end quote. Thus, we will now move in the direction of gender studies to complement and deepen the semiological analysis of mise en scène. That's not the main point. I'm trying to do this. I'm not sure if it's possible, but we'll try. Semiological analysis has itself also evolved since the spectator's gaze and activity have somewhat changed. The spectators of a contemporary production are now less interested in what the artist, the director or actor, actress, or any collaborator in the production meant to say than in what they think they discover in the mise en scène, according to what pleases or suits them, what confirms their tastes and convictions. If we want to go beyond classical semiological performance analysis, we should look for other ways of going deeper into a performance or mise en scène today. In order to do so, we should consider how the multi-dimensional approach of social relationships has renewed research on gender as an entry point into a more precise and gendered analysis of the performance we want to analyze and interpret. Now, with four different examples of recent production and using one or several components of the theory of gender, I would like to check how certain aspects of gender theory lead us to other concepts that we absolutely need if we want to go beyond the classical method of performance analysis. These four examples are Molière's, I'm going to use, for example, Molière's Le Misanthrope, directed by Stefan Braunschweig, and then I will particularly consider the question of social identity, question of sexual civility, age, and consent, consentement, exactement. The second example will be Le jeu de l'amour et du hasard, Game of Love and Chance, by Marivaux, directed by Lola Tergemina from La Réunion. It's an interesting production because it's in Creole, it's in Réunion Creole. And so it's, for the French, let's say the continental French audience, it's surprising, but not that surprising in fact. The third example will be Ce qu'il faut dire by Leonora Miano, What Must Be Said, or what one must say. It's difficult in English. Directed by Nordet last year, and I will look there more at the question of race, cultural identity, sisterhood, and post-coloniality. That will be also the third example by Leonora Miano. I will also look into post-colonialism and in immigration. And the fourth example will be Blanche-Neige et la chute du mur de Berlin, Snow White and the fall of the Berlin Wall by Methilde Weyer-Gans and Samuel Hercule. There I will look at the question of age, aging, adaptation, etc. Let me just go back to the tools I was trying to propose to you, coming from gender theory. Maybe all these tools I was mentioning are not really new tools. Maybe we were using them already when we did a performance analysis. But here now we can use them more systematically and with this notion of intersection, using this different notion and seeing how they cope together and what this alliance of different notions has as a consequence, and our understanding also of the text and the performance. So I have suggested that the study of gender and of its many different specific questions has been greatly renewed by the multi-dimensional intersectional approach of social relationships offered by gender theory. The task of the spectator or of the analyst of the mise en scène is to disclose and reveal these social relationships in the making of the mise en scène as well as in its reception. We have noted that the importance of the theory of gender, which is both global and fragmented in different rubrics. These are not simply new tools to refine performance analysis, but a new point of view. This is the point I'm trying to make. It's a new point of view, a feminist and critical point of view on what a text and its mise en scène can tell us and show us. Thus, we now have at our disposal additional critical tools, which moreover are intersectional and multiplied, which thus give us a better view, both global and fragmented, of the theatre. It would seem that the monteur, I call them the monteur, metteur en scène, the monteur because it's mounting, like last example, it's about mounting like a mechanic, really assembling a car. So it would seem that the monteur, metteur en scène, I mean fitter, liar, director, make the same point when referring to their Blanche-Neige and the fall of the Berlin Wall. They say, quote, "Our performance always plays with a double reading that you can have of an event or of an attitude according to one's age, culture, experience of life," end quote. We could add to this list these various factors in the analysis of social life while still drawing inspiration from feminist studies. So finally, I would say, returning finally to the introductory question and to the title of this talk, New Tendencies of Performance Analysis, and reconsidering the difference which we established between the semiological analysis of the performance on one side and the interpretative synthesis of performance studies on the other side, we have seen that both approaches tend to conquer and meet, maybe merge, and even to combine and amalgamate, to which we should add, or rather integrate, different components of gender studies which we find useful for the technical and the hermeneutical analysis of mise en scène. This is a vast and ambitious program which we can only cover partially according to our needs and to our personal relationship with theatre. For the time being, in Varna, we might have other preoccupation in Varna at the moment. Immediate preoccupation to run and see the next show in about 1 hour, and the other preoccupation, much more important, long-term preoccupation to look in the distance what is happening north of the Black Sea. Okay, I think I'm almost in time.
Thank you very much, Patrice, for this wonderful performance analysis. You mentioned in your closing remarks about just I don't know if that was a hypothesis. This is possibly, you said, a new political theater, and it's also my personal. I wonder what is political theater today, and how do we differentiate old political theater from the one you just mentioned, new political theater?
I think the traditional political theater was very curious to make the point clear, to make the political discourse understood without any or not too many doubt. It was a kind of like a pedagogical play where you have to understand the meaning, you have to understand the point. Here, you also have to understand. I think it's quite clear what she means, but somehow it is done in a language which is unusual to talk about politics, to talk about these very serious issues of racism and so on, and you wonder why is that. And I think the poetical language is a kind of also this alienation effect, or distanciation effect, and it is important to really make you rethink all these categories and be careful what. And also for me, it's the idea is suggesting the audience to really be able to read a poetical text today, because it's no longer, we don't read poetry too much. And somehow poetry can also be used for for the theatre, and for that, even for a very militant political theatre like in this example. So I would say it's this is a new way of talking about politics without being too obvious, too direct, and too boring, maybe.
Would you say that all these crossings, whether crossing of identity, nations, characters, whatever, crossings of ideologies, disempowers?
This what?
Disempowers political thinking. In other words, I understand that the earlier political theater was pretty much an oppositional theater. Mm-hmm. It was this either or, this modernist thing of either or, and I'm wondering if all these various crossings of postmodernity have disempowered the oppositional logic and philosophy of...
you mean disempower? Disempowered, you mean, or empowered?
Yeah, or weaken.
Normally it should not. The idea is to cross all this notion and to see, how we can analyze the text more subtly and with other points of view. So it's more complex actually. I don't think it's simplification, but it could also mean that people are a little lost because all these different new notions, which be it gestus or aging or consensus and so on. But the idea is this intersectionality, which was so important at the beginning of gender studies, when Crenshaw, an American, black American, African American theoretician, used it in order to say, we are not only analyzing racism, but we are analyzing racism and the status of women in society. And when you put the two difficulties together, then you understand how the situation is desperate. But you have to somehow, see things in context, and this is the idea of cross-fertilization or interaction of different notions. It's what I really liked in this notion of Crenshaw.
Thank you very much for this really very interesting lecture. It made me think of many things, but for example, this project, as you turned it to combine performance studies and theatre semiology, is really very interesting, and I can say that I think some inputs coming from dance studies can be quite interesting and fruitful for it, because at least since the 1990s within dance studies there have been developed quite interesting theoretical positions, methodologies and approaches to performance analysis founded exactly on gender studies, nowadays more and more post-colonialism, etc. But my question would be, what really provoked you now to go deeper into this project and into this topic? Have you missed something in contemporary theatre criticism, the usual theatre criticism that you read in the media? Is there some kind of shortage in critical positions towards the performances?
There's definitely an absence of critical views, and somehow the analysis and the theory are sometimes seen as not really necessary, just like for students or for professors, and that's all. Whereas I think that it's now time to really use the knowledge when we have accumulated in doing an analysis, a semiotic analysis, semiological analysis of any work of art, but really not doing it only to understand how it works as a mechanism, closed upon itself, but how it has also connection with the way where we live in and the ideology where we are in, and that's why I think new tools are necessary to revitalize this technical semiology, just analyzing facts. I think it's probably for me this is the challenge. This is the challenge I see, because I think we have, as far as I'm concerned, I have a feeling what I had to say about where to analyze a performance is pretty precise, but it's not enough. It's not enough anymore. Why is it not enough? Because it seems to be running on itself, or in circles, and doesn't really connect with what's happening in the world. That's why I was making this allusion to the north of Black Sea. So my suggestion is only to really go for and look for these tools, not only postcolonialism or feminism, but maybe other tools from social sciences, and really reconsider them in the analysis of what we thought we had understood in a performance. So it's going further than just just showing how it works. It's no longer for me. It's no longer interesting. So I think I need more challenge from other social sciences, particularly in text where this is always the problem of relationship between men and women, and we have this issue at the moment of what is consensus, what is consent, consentement, and so on. So this is, I think, what we need. But that's my lubie, my kind of just a suggestion.
Maybe I ask you a question too about this questionnaire that we all have in front of us. I saw that you almost count all the elements of the performance, but I saw that you put the spectator almost at the end. Does this any specific meanings of it, or is it just
No, I don't think there was a kind of a tactic there or a reason for that. But maybe the spectator is the one who gathers all this information from all these systems and is soaking all these things, and then somehow has to say something, to write something, to react in a certain way. So it's at the end of the process that the spectator can really, if the spectator wants to go further than just enjoy the show, can enjoy the show, but if you want to go further, I think you have to ask all these questions before, and plus the question I was trying to introduce today. So I think it's important to take that into account. I don't think if there is a logic in this questionnaire, it starts with general feature of the production. What your first impression. What is your first impression? What do you understand? I don't know nothing, or I'm not interested. And at the end, as a spectator, what have I done with it, and how can I use all the items in the specific analysis which are in these questions? How can I use them to improve deepen my understanding of the performance. Performance and text, because I'm not really trying to separate, exactly, clearly text and performance, like it used to be done that way, maybe also at the beginning of semiotics. But I think it's important to really understand how we function. So maybe also something I didn't mention, but which is very important, is cognitivism and cognitivist approach of how we remember a performance, how we analyze a performance, how we think about a performance, particularly if you see in front of you, if it's theatre. So this is another challenge, I think.